Hello there, I'm Brianna Schroe, and I'm here with your lecture on Vocabulary Part 2. Vocabulary and its importance. Vocabulary is strongly linked to academic success. It also facilitates accurate word recognition. And it is critical to not only reading achievement, but also comprehension. For comprehension, if a word is decoded and pronounced, but the meaning is not recognized, comprehension will be impaired. So a lot of our presentation today is going to focus around strategies that you can use in the classroom for teaching vocabulary. One of them is dialogic reading. This is mainly used with preschoolers. And this is different from what would normally happen in reading, because usually when an adult reads, the adult reads and the child listens to the adult reading. However, no one can read just by listening to someone else read. Instead, in this method, the adult helps the child become the teller of the story, the listener, the questioner, and the audience for the child. The child is not just sitting there and doing nothing. As I said, no one can read just by listening to someone else read. The easiest way to remember this is the acronym PEER, and each letter stands for something. P stands for prompt, E stands for evaluate, the second E stands for expand, and the R stands for repeat. So, the adult first prompts the child to say something about the book. Then they evaluate the child's response, and then they're going to expand the child's response by rephrasing and adding information to it. And lastly, the adult will repeat the prompt to make sure the child has learned from the expansion and their exchange between each other. So there's an example, so it's a little more clear for you to understand. So imagine that the parent or an adult and a child are looking at the page of a book that has a cat on it. The adult says, "What is this?" That's the prompt, while pointing at the cat. The child says, "Cat," and the parent follows with, "That's right," and this is the evaluation. "It's a black cat" is the expansion, so the adult is expanding on what was previously said. And then lastly, the adult will say, "Can you say cat?" And that's the repetition at the end. Another example would be imagining that the parent and a child are looking at the page of a book that has a picture of a fire engine on it. The parent would say, "What is this?" That's the prompt, while pointing to the fire truck. The child should say truck. The parent will then follow with, "That's right," because that's the evaluation. And the expansion would be, "It's a red fire truck." And lastly, to repeat it or have repetition, the adult would say, "Can you say fire truck?" There are also prompts, and those are recognized by the acronym CROWD. We have completion prompts, which are where a blank is left at the end of a sentence for a child to fill in. Looks like my example is not here anymore, but an example would be for a sentence like, "The cat is blank," and if the cat was black, they would fill in black. Recall prompts are questions about what the child has already read that has happened in a book. Example, "What happened to the dog in the story?" Open-ended prompts, that's for picture books, are questions. What is happening in this picture? In this way, the child's able to explain what's happening in this picture. The W stands for the W prompts, the what, the where, the when, the why, and how questions. Example, "Where is the boy?" And the D stands for distancing prompts, where we want to relate the pictures or words in the books the students are reading to the experiences in the real world they have already experienced. For example, let's say in class we're reading a book about a zoo, or at home we're reading about a book about a zoo, and we know that the child visited the zoo on a class field trip. So we want to refer back to visiting the zoo and ask which animals they saw at that zoo, and use that knowledge and their experiences. We have some don'ts of teaching vocabulary, and these are: don't require students to copy definitions. Don't just rely on definitions alone. Make sure you pre-teach all the unfamiliar words in a story, so all the vocabulary that a student may not know. And base general vocabulary instruction on the words from a story. Don't just come up with a random list of 10 vocabulary words to work on each week. Also, we don't want to forget to link words to the lives of our students. Then we have something called a word wizard chart. And this is a chart that contains new vocabulary words. Words may come from a text, a storybook, or from words outside the class that the student has encountered in some way. And the student has to bring in an explanation of how the word was used. Words are then recorded on a large classroom chart somewhere in the room, and students earn points and then certificates. You could have like the word wizard, the word wildcat, word watcher, for achieving a certain amount of points. And this is a great way to have students think about vocabulary while they're not in school, because you're asking them to look for words from outside the classroom that they have encountered in some way. Then we have a 4-square vocabulary approach. I've used this in my teaching, and I'll show you some of those examples as well. But basically, it's 4 boxes. One box, we write the word to be learned. Another box, we write examples of what the word means. And in another box, we're going to write non-examples of what the word means. And then we write a definition of the word. And some will even have a picture instead of non-examples, which is kind of what I like to use. And this can be adapted in so many ways. So basically, word, examples, non-examples, and definitions. Here's an example from a culinary class that's working on stocks. And this is from one of the classes I actually taught. So we have the vocabulary word stock. In this one, I provided the definition for them because it was pretty long and I didn't want them to have to copy it. So we have the definition: the broth prepared by boiling meat, fish, chicken, etc., with or without vegetables or seasonings, and used especially as a foundation for soups and sauces. So since that definition is so long, my next square had them put a definition in their own words: broth made by boiling chicken, meat, or fish, or another protein. So that's a much simpler definition, and the student's probably more likely to remember that when they come across the word stock. There was also a picture or drawing, especially for those students that are really visual learners. And then I had them make a meaningful sentence. Before I can make a soup, I need to make a stock. And in the meaningful sentence, they had to make sure they used the word. So as you can see just from this, how different you can make the 4-square vocabulary approach and adapt it. And I will show you one more example from one of my classes. And this was also from a culinary arts class, and we were learning about leavening agents in baking. So the definition was: films of a liquid solution stretched around air. When the surface tension of the liquid weakens, the liquid will break apart. So in leavening agents, we have bubbles. So that was one of our vocabulary words for this class period. And the definition in your own words was: a thin film of liquid with air. There's a picture or drawing, and then a meaningful sentence: bubbles are needed for leavening. Those are just some examples. You can create your own and adapt them in any way you want to. So let's review a little bit about vocabulary instruction. We want to make sure we have students study definitions, Then apply words into natural sentences. We also want to provide repeated exposures to words, use a variety of activities, provide strategies for remembering words, and teach words in semantic groupings, and review different meanings of words. So one thing we want to focus on is teaching word relationships. So there are similar relationships between words. We have a homonym, that is a word that sounds like another word but has a different meaning. So for example, there and there. An antonym, which is a word that has the opposite meaning of another word. Pretty, ugly. They're opposite of each other. Hot, cold. Synonyms, words that mean the same thing but look different. Are called synonyms. Their meanings are very similar. So pretty and cute are very close to each other, or even beautiful could be in there. So we want to teach this by providing students with maps to map it out. So we could have our word in the middle, which is weak, and then we have a synonym, which is fragile or frail, and homonym is weak, like the day of the week. It sounds the same, but it has a different meaning. An anonym, and remember anonyms are the opposite meaning of another word. So strong, robust is opposite of weak. Something else you can do is have students categorize vocabulary words. And what I'm about to show you is sometimes will be said as a card sort. So first of all, let me talk about this before I get into that. So categorizing vocabulary words needs to be formally taught, and this may be a new concept to learners. So just on this page, I have fruits and vegetables categorized together. So in order to do this as a card sort, you could give the students a bunch of pictures, and they're all mixed up in no particular order, and you have them sort the following pictures into two categories. You can either have it like this, where you don't provide them with the categories, or you can provide them with the two categories you want. And so this leads into our next one. So that's kind of what we would call a word sort. So we present students with a large group of words to sort into logical categories. Students can work in pairs or small groups. There's different types of sorts: closed sorts or open sort. A closed sort is where the teacher provides the categories in advance. So for instance, me providing vegetables and a fruit in advance would mean that that is a closed sort. And an open sort means that the students have to figure out the connections themselves and make the categories on their own, which is also a really good idea, and it helps students to think beyond the tasks that they're being given. Another strategy is list, group, label. In this strategy, we ask students to list about 25 words on a certain topic. So for example, words associated with danger. Then we're going to ask students to group words into categories, sort of like we did with the word sort, but a little different. And then we ask students to label what they used for the category. So this is a list, group, label. We give a student a list of words. We ask students to list about 25 words on a topic. Then we ask them to group them into categories and then label what they use for their category. So in this, the student is coming up with everything on their own. All we're providing them with is the topic. Another strategy is the keyword method. In this, we want to introduce the target word or vocabulary word. We want to learn the keywords, the phonetic link, remember the contents of the drawing, and recall the keyword and picture when given the target word. So this one's a little hard to grasp, so I have an example for us. So this is a math example of the keyword method. So for instance, students often confuse radius and diameter. So the target word here is radius, that's the vocabulary word. So the student draws a picture of a circle with a hanging radish. The radius, just so we all know, is a line from the center of the circle to the edge. And this is confusing for students. Although this picture seems silly, you probably won't confuse radius with diameter anymore. And when someone mentions radius in the future, the sound of that word should remind you of a radish. The image of a radish swinging inside a circle should pop into your head instantly. The radish swinging back and forth from the center. Thus, we're able to see that radius means the distance from the center of the circle to the edge. Yes, this takes a little more thought, but once you come up with it, then it's kind of hard to forget. So a swinging radish reminds you of radius. Then we have a semantic feature map, or a semantic feature analysis, but some people call it a semantic feature map. In this, we place the name of the category in the upper left corner, and after I describe it, I'll show you. We list members of the category beneath it, and then we're going to label each column with a feature that may or may not apply to a given category. We use positives and O's depending on whether or not the category shares the feature. So the positive stands for the fact that it has the feature, and the O stands for the fact that it doesn't have the feature. And we can also use S, the letter S, to stand for sometimes, or a question mark if you're not sure or unsure. Oh, let me put them all up here for you. So, here's our example of our semantic feature analysis. This is about snakes. So we place the name of the category in the upper left corner. That's snakes. That's our main one. Then we list members of the category beneath it, so the different types of snakes. Then we label each column with a feature that may or may not apply. So poisonous, found in U.S., lives in trees, lays eggs. Then we use positives and O's to determine whether they have that feature or not. So a boa constrictor is not poisonous, is not in the U.S., sometimes lives in trees, and it does not lay eggs. A king snake is not poisonous. It is found in the U.S. It does not live in trees, and it lays eggs. A rattlesnake is poisonous, is found in the U.S., doesn't live in trees, doesn't lay eggs. A ball python, not poisonous, not found in the U.S., but does live in trees, does lay eggs. A garter snake, not poisonous, found in the U.S., doesn't live in trees, doesn't lay eggs. So why would we want to use this? Well, it illustrates how to use words that are both similar and different, and helps us emphasize the uniqueness of each word. It also draws on the student's prior knowledge and allows us to discuss and elicit information about different word meanings. So we can see the similarities and the differences here. So, if you are interested in the semantic feature analysis, you can check out this link from the Reading Rockets, www.readingrockets.org/strategies/semantic feature analysis. And this gives you lots of examples on how to use semantic feature analysis in a variety of subjects and ways, even more than just how I showed you. So let's get back to our presentation. So something important about vocabulary is that instruction in vocabulary, we want to make sure we're inferring the meaning from the context. So one way we can do this, we can focus on the word we don't know by underlining it or writing it. We can look for passage clues. We can also write the passage clues below the word. Then we can think what the word means based on the clues. And we can see if it makes sense. If not, we look for more clues later in the passage and we revise. So another strategy would be word maps. Why would we want to use a word map? Well, Word maps help students develop their understanding of a word. It not only helps students think about new terms or concepts in several ways, but it helps by asking the following questions. What is it? What is it like? What are some examples? And that big key here, we're activating students' prior knowledge, we're building on it, and we're giving them a way to visually represent information, especially new information. So here's an example of a word map. So let's say, for example, our concept is the revolution. What is it? The student could put a momentous change, a political overthrow brought about from within a government system. What is it like? Well, force is often used and different groups gain power. The purpose is usually to improve a government, and examples could be the French Revolution, the Cultural Revolution, and the U.S. Revolutionary War. So you can see how a concept or a word that a student doesn't know can be expanded upon, and they can get lots of more information, and it can develop their understanding of the word even further than what you might expect. So we have another strategy here, the KIM. K stands for key idea, I stands for information, and M stands for memory clue. So if our key idea is a drought and the information is little or no rain over a period of time, memory clue, you would have them draw a picture or you have them cut it out of a magazine. I just got this from Clip Art. And then a coup, a takeover of government by military, and there's a tank here. So this really helps students to get information and also have a visual memory clue to go with it. I know I'm throwing lots of strategies at you today, but I just want you to think about them and think about which ones you might want to use with some students. Then we have word lists. In this, you work with a partner. You choose a base word, such as play. You write as many words as you can by adding prefixes and suffixes. So playful, playing, replay is as simple as that. And you could do this just if you had a few minutes in your classroom each day, maybe for bell work, or maybe just to get your day started, or maybe as a transition activity. Another one is walkabout words. This is an active word categorization activity. It's used to reinforce thematic vocabulary. You basically give out word cards and ask students to find a group. So let's say these are our words: sight, sub, moon, transport, airplane, flight, light, sky, night, jet, cloud, bright. Those could be some examples. So let's go with our directions with those examples. So we give out the word cards and ask students to find a group. So here our thematic group was sun, moon, sky, cloud. Our orthographic group was sight, fight, light, night, bright. And another thematic group could be transport, jet, airplane, and rocket. So you can see how that works. So some other things to consider in vocabulary is morphology. Morphology is the smallest meaningful unit of language. It includes prefixes and suffixes, known as affixes, and verb tense, spelling past tense with ed. So example of morphology would be boy with the S. So those are both the smallest meaning of unit in that word. So some things that you need to know about morphology. Roots are the meaning in a word. They're kind of the base. Prefixes change the meaning of the root word, and base words can stand alone. But something I should note that I just messed up on is roots are not base words, and they don't stand alone. So even though roots are the meaning in a word, they're not base words and they don't stand alone. But base words can stand alone. And we'll give you examples and all kinds of information to go with this, but also other strategies as we go on. So Greek word parts in words have meaning. Usually two are joined by an O. So another activity you could do in here is just to toss the ball around the room and have students add or change morpheme to words. So you could start with the word play, and then someone changed it to player. Repeat, and you make it repeating. Play becomes replay. And that can really help students with morphology. So roots are the main parts of the word with a specific meaning. Meaning is changed by the addition of affixes, prefixes, that should be prefixes and suffixes. Sorry guys. And they are helpful for decoding, spelling, and vocabulary. Morphology, we have free morphemes and bound morphemes. I'm just going to put them all up here. So free morphemes can stand alone. These are our base words. And bound morphemes can't stand alone. These are our prefixes and suffixes, known as our roots. So here we have base words versus root words. A base word can stand alone. So an example, the base word for review is view. The base word for hateful is hate. So those are actually their own words. A root word can't stand alone. So the root word for eruption is rupt. That's not a real word. And the root word for metamorphosis is morph. That's not a real word either. So it can't stand alone. Then we have problems with morphology. This is one where there's a difficulty with word endings. We have difficulty choosing the correct affixes, prefix and suffix, and or omitting them. Difficulty with verb tense, and difficulty using correct inflections. Big versus bigger, and lastly, difficulty with word deviation. So why do we need to teach affixes, the prefix and the suffix? Well, relatively few exist, and they are used in so many words. They have relatively constant meanings and are easy to define. They make multisyllabic words easy to read and spell. They help people figure out the meaning of the words. So, derivatives, and that's what that should have been earlier, was derivatives, not deviations. So, problems with morphology should be difficulty with word derivatives. Sorry about that. So then we have derivatives. Provide explicit instruction in prefixes and suffixes and show how they affect meaning. And we want to teach all derivations of a word and show how syntax changes based on the part of a speech. Friend, friendly, befriend. Teach a base word and how to form derivatives. Help. Group words and graphic organize. Then for teaching prefixes, we want to explain the meaning of the prefix. For example, mono means one and con means together. Have students construct a word family list. Monogram, monologue, monorail. This is extremely helpful for students to recognize patterns and relationships. So we have the four most frequent prefixes, and those are right here. Dis means opposite. In, im, ill, ear, not. Re means again. And un means not. It's important to show these to students and to teach them their meaning. Then we have suffixes. Most common are the inflectional endings such as the s, the ed, the ing, er, es, and the ist. That change the number, person, or tense of the base word. Derivational endings modify the base and produce a word that is often a different part of speech. Are ly, less, ness, ship, fold, mint. And so, our four most common suffixes are ed, which is our past tense verb, our ing, verb form, ly, characteristic of, and the s or the es is more than one. And 72% of words in English that have suffixes include these four common suffixes. So we have layers of language. We have Anglo-Saxon, Latin, and Greek. Anglo-Saxon-based words are common, short, everyday, down-to-earth words used in ordinary situations. They're used frequently in informal speech and found in school primers. Examples: run, jump, cry, laugh, sing, eye, mouth, chin, mother, father, love, and happy. Common Anglo-Saxon prefixes: in or not, infield, infirm, un, a, re, d, pre, miss, dis, and for. And there's just some examples there. I'm not going to read them all for you guys. And then we have common Anglo-Saxon suffixes: ed, ing, er, ist, like coldest, the wise, muddy, able, treatable, laughable, those kind of things. Kingdom, freedom, full, we, and left. And there's examples there as well. Then we have our Latin-based words. And these are technical, sophisticated words used primarily in more formal contexts, such as literature and textbooks. And Latin-based words are always affixed, as in disruptive, subscription, predicted, and reflecting. So our Latin prefixes: in addition to Anglo-Saxon prefixes, which are used with Latin root, we often use these Latin prefixes. So they're also important to teach students when necessary. I'm not going to read them, but they're up there for you for examples. And you can stop this at any time if you want to read them all. Then we have Latin suffixes. And suffixes can give a word its grammatical part of speech. So common Latin suffixes include these, and in the parentheses shows you the part of speech that that word will become if it's added to a word, which is kind of interesting. Like I said, if you want to look at any of these charts that I have that I'm not reading for you, feel free to stop this video at any time. Then we have common Lat roots: tract, which means to drag or pull; spect means to look; port means to carry; dict is to say, like dictation; rupt is to break; and scrib is to write, or scribe, sorry. Then we have Greek combining forms. So these forms, sometimes called roots, compound to form words such as photograph, microscope, and psychology. Some of the combining forms, such as tele and auto, act as prefixes. Some of the combining forms, such as ology and logy, act as suffixes. So our Greek-based words, the letter sound correspondences from Greek for the sound of ph makes that f, and the ch for the k, that's the k sound. So anything in these little backslashes here, that's a sound. So our ch makes the k sound, y as in long I in the middle of the words. Then we have ps, rh, pn, pt, mn, and words beginning with x. Words tend to be related to math and science usually when they're Greek-based like this. Parts are called combining forms because they compound. Photograph or photography. Greek letter sound correspondence, here they are. While using the basic consonants and vowels, words of Greek origin have several unique graphics, including chromosome, gymnasium, rhomboid, psychology, pneumonia, hydrogen, philosophy, mnemonic. So we want to connect with meaning. Teach the Greek combining form along with its meaning. So hydro means water, bio means life, biblio means book, auto means self, chrome color, chron time, psych mind, astro the star, geo is earth, ology is the study of. So some common Greek roots that you see over and over is phono, thern, photo, tele, graphogram, and we have the meanings of those in the parentheses. So lessons for Latin and Greek roots. We can write a root word on the board or in the middle of a semantic map, such as rept, port, form, or tact. And we want to have students generate as many words as they can think of that share that root word. Have students figure out the meaning of the root word after they've come up with all those words. And discuss how the affixes, the prefix or the suffix, change the meaning of the root word. So let's review what we already know about vocabulary as a wrap-up. So vocabulary knowledge is related to our reading comprehension, as I mentioned at the very beginning, because if the student is able to decode, but they're not able to get meaning from that word, they're not able to have reading comprehension. The students require multiple exposures to a word, so just one time working with the word or learning about it is just not going to cut it. They also need definitional and contextual information. And then lastly, direct instruction improves vocabulary knowledge and reading comprehension. And that's all I have for you in this video lecture on vocabulary part 2. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me. Thank you.